Welcome to the Counterfeit Sleep Podcast, where we help you answer today's most important health and wellness question. Is your sleep making you tired? I'm your host, O2 Tara Clancy. Join me each week for the stories, the science, and the solutions to help you banish counterfeit sleep and have more energy, increased productivity, and a reflection in the mirror you love. Go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get each new episode as soon as it goes live. If your sleep is making you tired, it's time to change that and get back to being you.
The Counterfeit Sleep Podcast, Season 1, Episode 11. When was the last time you felt sad? If you're like most people, feelings of sadness are more common than ever, especially with all the loss and uncertainty we have in our world right now. But what happens when feeling blue persists and deepens? What happens when on a beautiful sunny day with your precious young children, you have a dark storm cloud hanging over you? That's exactly what happened to our guest today, Cindy Chosick. Cindy is a professional speaker and a ghostwriter on mental health. She speaks and writes about how depression and anxiety creep into our lives without us even knowing it. Through her work, she helps us connect the dots to the symptoms, solutions, and sound bites to mental wellness so we can help ourselves, our teams, and our loved ones. And today, Cindy shares her story and key insights with us. In this episode, you'll recognize what anxiety and depression look like and feel like. You'll learn what you can do to help yourself or a loved one. And you'll understand the significant role of sleep in mental health. So listen in and then learn your risk of counterfeit sleep. Take the screening at counterfeitsleep.com.
Hello, Cindy, and welcome to the Counterfeit Sleep Podcast.
Thank you, Tara. This is wonderful to be here.
And I'm so excited to get to talk to you, especially because we are in Mental Health Month and, nationwide Mental Health Awareness Month. It's such an important time always for us to be thinking about mental health, of course, but especially now with everything that we're dealing with and our modern lives in general. So, and we've spoken on a couple of different occasions about different things. So, as I said, I'm really glad to have the chance to speak with you here today, on the podcast. And the thing I want to start with is this idea. On the Counterfeit Sleep podcast, we often talk about this idea of the XYZ formula, right? And we say, if you have problem X, ask why. And make your primary suspect your Z's. And by that, I mean your sleep, right?
Yes.
And when it comes to mental health, I think that is so true. And I'll just give you this example. A bunch of years ago, when I was newly divorced and I'd newly gone back to work full time, and I had two very young kids, you might say I had a bit of stress in my life, right? And when it got to the point that I was really like practically biting off my kids' heads over everything, I was like, okay, you know what? I just need to go talk to somebody. I need to work through this. And I ended up speaking with this therapist, and I told her what was going on. And she said, well, it sounds like you may be dealing with a generalized anxiety disorder. And Cindy, to be honest with you, I was like, what? Anxiety? Are you kidding me? She was so right. And I had never really put the pieces together, and I have a ton of psychology in my background, and and I think of myself as pretty aware, but I just never recognized it. And yet I had a bunch of signs, and I know it's stuff that we're going to talk about as we go through. So it was such an eye opener for me. And just by talking with this therapist and gaining some perspective, things really changed for me. So again, that's why I'm so happy for us to talk today, because I know you have a great story to tell and some really great information to share too, that really may help our listeners, just get to that place of feeling good. So why don't I turn it over to you? you so you can tell us a little bit about your story and a little bit about what your experience has been.
Thank you. Yes, Tara. Interestingly enough, my experience is similar to yours, but I was diagnosed with depression. And this was back in 2008. Same thing, had three little kids. They were 6, 5, and 5. And that summer was just it was beyond stressful. So if I had a rubber band and I pulled it as tight as it could before it snaps, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I was crying all the time. And I was uh, just obsessed. I was obsessed with staining our deck that year. And for whatever reason, it had to be done that year. And it was really wild. And a friend of mine came by and she brought lemonade and I started talking with her. And there was a cable man in our yard on the pole because we had cable issues. The children were literally frolicking in the yard, which I didn't even know frolicking was anywhere outside of a storybook for kids.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there bawling on our newly stained deck to my girlfriend, and I have no idea why. And she leaned in and she said, "Cindy, I think you might be depressed." And I was shocked, like you. I'm like, what do I have to be depressed about? I have a great husband. I have these great kids who happen to be frolicking in the yard. And then, we have food, we have clothes, we have jobs, we have, everything, a roof over our head. There was nothing to be depressed about. And she explained depression and anxiety are not emotional issues. They're more mental health issues. Now, in current day today, they've changed them to mental diseases. And it was really interesting to me because I was shocked. I thought, oh gosh, I just figured it kind of, you shared with me, it kind of seeped into your life.
Yeah.
And it does that. So my metaphor I use, it's like a storm. One day you're feeling sunny and there's not a cloud in the sky. And then like the next day, a couple clouds might creep in and then it's a little bit darker. And then all of a sudden it's lightning and raining and pouring. And then all of a sudden the boat is rocking and there's a tornado coming, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how I have learned. That's kind of the model that I follow for my own mental health checks.
Yeah.
To see where I'm at on those 5 phases of the storm.
Right.
And
You know what? Let's just unpack that a little bit too, because I think
sure.
it's such an important point, of saying, um, let's just think about going downstairs too, right? Like
Hmm.
if you're at the top of the stairs, like I have a puppy now, right? And we laugh.
Hmm.
She's almost 9 months. She goes down the stairs, no problem. But we
Hmm.
laugh when we think back to just, 6 months ago when she used to stand at the top and like be so afraid to go down because it looks like such a big deal, right?
Hmm.
When you go down that first step, the next step isn't such a big deal because it's closer, right? And I
Right.
think that's what happens a lot of time with any kind of mental wellness or mental health kind of thing. If
Hmm.
you're at the top and you take that one step down, then you're so much closer to the next step. And you do
Hmm.
that, and then you don't necessarily realize what things looked like from above because you've made
Right.
this small step down. And so by
Hmm.
the time, you can get to the bottom and you completely forget what the
Hmm.
top looked like and you don't
Right.
really realize. So I think that idea that you mentioned about coming so slowly, or this as a storm, it comes in so slowly, you
Right.
don't really realize it. You can be right in the middle of it and
It
not
just
even
creeps in.
recognize it because it creeps
Hmm.
in. Good. Yeah,
It
that
does.
definitely, I think that's such
Yeah.
an important point for listeners to really think about.
Absolutely. And when I share that, when I speak, a lot of people can resonate with it. They're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you don't even realize you're not your same regular person.
Right.
And that was the other thing my girlfriend told me was that she suffers through anxiety,
Mm.
like you. And when she's anxious, she turns into a raging bee,
Mm.
And so, and she explained, she said, we all have different symptoms. Where in 2008, I was thinking, well, gosh, if I was depressed, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Well, I could get out of bed. It was just other things that were like driving me to do other
Right.
symptoms. So,
Yeah, people may have an impression of somebody who's depressed, like you said, who
mhm,
cannot get out of bed, but that is not. everybody's going to express it differently, just like they'll
Right.
express anxiety differently. So maybe, somebody can't think who's,
Hmm.
feeling anxious, say, or somebody can't have a positive emotional kind of relationship with somebody because they're anxious. You're right. I
Exactly.
mean, it manifests in different ways, which goes back to what I
Hmm.
was saying before about that XYZ thing. Whatever the
Hmm.
problem may be, it may be, the important thing really is to ask why.
Ask yourself today's most important health and wellness question. Is your sleep making you tired? Go to isyoursleepmakingyoutired.com and get your copy today. Today's sponsor asks this important question. Have you done a mental health check today? Have you been feeling off? How long have you felt that way? Cindy Chosick is a speaker, ghostwriter, and author who connects the dots to the symptoms, solutions, and sound bites so we can help ourselves, our teams, and our loved ones. Learn more at getsoconnected.com.
Okay, so good.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then she told, she said it comes in different people differently. Just like when I had my first bout of diagnosed anxiety a few years ago. So I can relate to you on that level too. And that was right after a major car
Mm.
accident with my kids. And I had gone into, so your anxiety, what was your anxiety symptoms?
It was definitely on the emotional end. I was
Mhm.
really ready to bite my kids'
That's
heads off
right.
at the smallest thing.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just didn't have the emotional bandwidth
Right.
for them. Forget, they weren't even trying to frolic. They were just trying to walk around the house. And I was like losing it. And I knew, and I know I had a ton of stress in my life because of all those
Right.
changes. So it was just
Yeah.
almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like
Yes.
too much to take on, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and what was great about what you did was that you recognize that you're not your normal self. And sometimes it takes us till, the storm's coming in, it's raining, and now, the lightning's coming, and we're like, what is going on? This is not who I am.
So let me ask you now, let's connect it to the sleep piece because that's a
Hmm.
big part for a lot of people
It
in
is.
general, right? And I will tell
Yes.
you for me, I didn't realize until much later, after this anxiety thing, I didn't realize till much later that I was actually getting counterfeit sleep as well. But
Hmm.
what I did realize in hindsight, once I found out I was getting counterfeit sleep, was that I know that when I would be like having like a really, big moment where I was really
Hmm.
anxious, I would be like, you know what? I'm just going to go lay down and I'm just going to go nap for a while and whatever. So, and on some level, I knew that I needed to sleep. I didn't realize that I was having a sleep problem at night, and that's
Hmm.
what was kind of driving it for me. But once I did end up kind of banishing the counterfeit sleep, then the anxiety really did resolve itself. But did you find a sleep component in your experience? Do you have any, you know, thoughts on that or any comments on
Oh,
that?
for sure, for sure. Now that I've been on this side of it, I can kind of uh recognize when things are getting revved up, when that storm is starting to creep in and I'm not feeling like myself, or there's days that I have to say, I don't want to be alone today, because something just, whatever it
Right.
was, just
Yeah.
kind of creeped in. And then the anxiety, when I can recognize the anxiety. And what I realized this past year, it was interesting because I started getting anxiety at night.
Mm.
And then I started relating it back to like other times in my life when I had the active depression and all that kind of stuff, where like I couldn't sleep. Like I'd be up
Mm.
till like 1 in the morning and for no reason. Maybe it's, the change of life with menopause or whatever it could be, or stress. And I didn't equate stress to the anxiety or depression. To me, it was three different things. But the lack of sleep came in, especially this past year, because I would end up getting like sleep anxiety on Sunday nights and not be able to sleep because the new week was coming. And
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
such a
I
common. Yeah. Can I
it is. And
expand on
then
that?
so
Yeah.
now when when I can't sleep at night, I have to like think back, okay, what am I feeling? Similar to the mental health checks I teach people to do, do a mental health check every day, several times a day. But like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's going on in my life? And then, do some breathing, see if there's pain anywhere, just to check in with yourself, and then
Right.
kind of try to figure out, okay, am I feeling anxious? Do I have my normal depression symptoms or a different symptom? And can I relax myself? My anxiety after the car accident was off the charts. I felt that things weren't quite right. So I went in and I wanted to get a change in my medicine. And I talked to the doctor. She's like, okay, we'll change you. And I said, oh, and she was getting ready to do the physical exam. And I said, can you check my stomach? And she's like, what's going on with your stomach? I said, I think I have a tumor.
Oh God.
I said, and she's like, a tumor? Why do you think that? I said, oh gosh, there's this huge ball of cement in my stomach,
Yes.
and it feels uh, awful. I can't eat. I get nauseous. I want to, I'm not feeling comfortable. And she said, well, how long has that been going on? I said, oh, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what happened 3 weeks ago? I said, oh, I was in a major car accident with my kids.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, that's anxiety. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Similar
Yeah.
to you.
And what's so funny about that is what's really going on, and this is ties it all to the sleep as well. When you're anxious and you
Mm-hmm.
can't fall asleep, then
Mm-hmm.
or if you do manage to fall asleep and then you wake up again because you're not really getting into the deep phase of sleep, what's happening when you get up for the day and you have to go through your day, you're now running on adrenaline. And in
Mm-hmm.
order to keep you going, you're going to have all these powerful chemicals pumping through your body. And
Mm-hmm.
depending upon how your gut runs, a lot of times you'll end up feeling that in the gut. That's
Mm-hmm.
definitely where I feel, if I feel anxiety, it's like a kind of crunching feeling in my stomach as well. And so I think
Right.
that's a great thing for people to clue into, because sometimes when you are, especially with anxiety, right, you can be so in your head that you're not
Mm-hmm.
really checking into your body, as you were just describing as well. So if you
Mm-hmm.
do go through that check and just start to notice some of the things that you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling, first of all, get you out of your head and get you into the
Right.
present moment, because anxiety really is about being in the future, right? Thinking
Mm-hmm.
about future things. So if you do go ahead and do that check-in as you were just describing, it'll get you back into your body. And I'm glad you talked about the breathing too, because that's our most basic thing. So if we can
Mm-hmm.
bring ourselves back to our most basic need, then that can really help us ground ourselves too. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and it depends where, and there's a, like with anything, there's a continuum of physical health, there's a continuum of mental health, there's a continuum of emotional health. And so as you were describing
Absolutely.
it, depending upon where you are on that continuum, then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to figure out what the right treatment would be, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can key into yourself and see what's going on, then you can kind of decide, right? Like you said, okay, let me make a concerted effort to get better sleep tonight. Let me make a
Mm-hmm.
concerted effort to eat better today and stay hydrated. And then you gave a certain time frame. Can you just talk through that again? If you don't feel like, a
Mm-hmm.
resolution, if you don't feel things getting better, then
Right.
then
Right.
what?
So the couple things to mention are, number one, well, there's three things I always emphasize. Number one, the symptoms are different in all of us.
Mm,
So, and especially men have completely different symptoms. Number two is that if you're feeling that you or someone you love or work with is not quite feeling their self, and you're concerned about them, or you're concerned about yourself for 2 weeks, if it's lasting 2 weeks, because that's when it kind of crosses the spectrum of, I've got the blues today
yeah.
versus, depressed and not able to move into, get out of my bed. So it kind of, goes in, there's a huge spectrum, but
Yeah.
definitely not the blues if it's lasting 2 weeks or longer. And so then you call your doctor right away. For people who are managers or leaders, give their employee that they're concerned about the day off to see the doctor, because it's something that needs to be looked at and diagnosed, or at least give peace of mind.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that it's a disease. It's not something you can just shake off. There's people in my family that still believe I could just shake it off, and you can't.
Right.
So definitely get your help. And if you were diabetic, if you had high cholesterol or high blood pressure, you'd get that treated from a doctor. And this is nothing different than that.
Absolutely. Those are three great points. And then I think, as you just said about, if you had a physical condition, you treat it. We have so long as a society viewed mental health in a different way. And I think we're moving the needle, but we still have a long way to go. But I hope people that are really, thinking about this, listening and thinking about this today can say, hey, it's a part of me. It's like my physical self, my mental self is the same, and it all deserves the right kind of treatment. And I will just say, if anybody is, sleep really can drive all these things. These things can then further interrupt your sleep. So if you're just not feeling great, I do have a screening on my website that you can take it to see if you may be showing some signs of counterfeit sleep. And then that can help you figure out, what's driving what and what your next best step might be. So Cindy, thank you so much. As we finish up here, I'd like to ask you two questions. And the first one is, if you were able to put up a billboard somewhere, knowing that billboards are relatively small and people drive by relatively quickly, what message would you like to put up on a
That is
billboard?
such a great question. My message would be, have you checked your mental health today?
Nice. Very nice, because we need to key into it. We need to keep it on our minds. Wonderful. Okay. And so then my last question for you is, how will people find you? How can people reach out and get in touch with you?
They can visit my website, cindychosick.com, or my ghostwriting site is soconnectedllc.com. Chosick is kind of a hard name to spell, so I like to give both of them. One way or the other, they'll get to me.
That's a good idea. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for sharing, your story with us here on the Counterfeit Sleep podcast.
Absolutely.
And especially, for Mental Health Month, we really need to give some good energy to our mental health and keep it on our radars. And I think you've definitely helped us to do that. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work too, Tara, because I really learned a lot from you about when we've had our chats about sleep, and you're always in my mind when I'm losing sleep. I think back to the checklist I took on your website, which is fantastic. And I think back to that, and I'm like, okay, Tara would tell me this.
Well, thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate you giving me that positive feedback. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
When you're ready for your aha moment, when you're ready to have more energy, increased productivity, and a reflection in the mirror you love, go to counterfeitsleep.com and take the Counterfeit Sleep screening. Today's sponsor asks this important question. Have you done a mental health check today? Have you been feeling off? How long have you felt that way? Cindy Chosick is a speaker, ghostwriter, and author who connects the dots to the symptoms, solutions, and sound bites so we can help ourselves, our teams, and our loved ones. Learn more at getsoconnected.com. That ends this episode of the Counterfeit Sleep podcast, where we help you answer today's most important health and wellness question. Is your sleep making you tired? Follow us to get the stories, the science, and the solutions to help you take your counterfeit sleep journey. And leave us a review to help other people find us. Thank you. And remember, if your sleep is making you tired, it's time to change that and get back to being you.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.